Good evening. I'm Adam de Sola Poole, the son of Ithiel de Sola Poole, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the 2011 Ithiel de Sola Poole Lecture as part of the Salzburg Global Seminar. We're really lucky tonight to have Charles Sennett and Stephen Salyer here to talk to us as the alumni and to bring us all together in this wonderful building. Thank you very much, Marieke van Dam and the members of the planning committee, two of whom I particularly would like to point out were friends of my father, Herb Gleason and Charles Wazansky. Thank you both, and thank you all on the planning committee for making this such a wonderful event. I certainly remember the State House from my youth because we grew up in Cambridge. My father taught at MIT from the mid-1950s till he died in 1984. He also loved the Salzburg Seminar. The Salzburg Seminar was really important for him. He was there as a lecturer 3 times, 1956, 1962, and the last time in 1981, where he was part of a seminar on democracy, media, and social change. And this was just after he had completed some research in Egypt, where he had been studying the impact of installing the first fixed-line telephones into rural villages. So I'm really eager to hear what Charles Sennett has to say now about the changes that are happening in Egypt, as he will tonight. In that research that my father did, which impacted his 1981 Salzburg seminar session, he found that people were very eager to get these telephone lines in, that they had a real impact on emergency services, on the national central parties controlling the local mayors, but also on the farmers. The farmers were really happy about this because they didn't have to go from town to town checking on prices. They could call around and find out where the best raw material inputs were and where the best prices for their cotton were. So these telephone lines were of great importance. Now I'm sure today that every farmer has a mobile phone and an app that he can get those up-to-date prices. But in 1980s, this was a really important thing. But that was only 30 years ago. Kamil Manoufi wrote in the International Journal of Middle East Studies, which came out in 1981, about some of this research. He said, "In the vast multi-dimensional development that Egypt has experienced since the 1952 revolution, mass media played a major role. They were repeatedly used to mobilize the tradition-bound village-based masses, to gain popular support for the leaders, institutions, and policies of the new regime." Of course, that new regime was the 1952 one. "And to instill ideas, perceptions, and values relevant to the political modernization." My father also wrote at that point in time in a book called Politics on Wired Nations about the changes he had seen. And he said, if what we had anticipated as a consequence of electronic communication is even for the most part correct, we are at the edge of a vast transformation of society. These prospects of drastic change have very little in common with most political platforms that advocate drastic change. They are changes that arise out of the very nature of electronic communications technologies. They reflect the ease with which communication can operate over global distance and the abundance of bandwidth that can now be made available to all, without producing any exhaustion of the Earth's resources. These technological facts have profound social and political consequences. People who think about social change in traditional political terms cannot begin to imagine the changes that lie ahead. Conventional reformers cast their programs in terms of national policies or in terms of laws and central planning. But in the end, what will shape the future is a creative potential that inheres in the new technologies of electronic communication. Thus, I'm really eager to hear Charles Sennett's lecture tonight. Unfortunately, I'll only hear it when it's posted on the Salzburg Global Seminar website, but you are the lucky ones who will hear it in person. Charles is a great speaker, and I've been really enjoying watching his global post during these events. And thank you, Charles, for founding it. It's a wonderful platform. Charles has won numerous prizes, and even best of all for me, he worked at the Boston Globe, my local hometown newspaper. That is great, Charles. Thank you very much. Stephen, if I have forgotten any of Charles's great accolades, please would you mention them just before he gets started. So I now turn it over to you for this wonderful lecture. Stephen, Charles, thank you, and best wishes. Good night.